All right then, perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone to this VR update. We might have a few more people logging on within a few minutes. This event became a reality because we thought it would be interesting to get an insight into the current state of VR. And we're very grateful that both Sune and Tiara could be here today. And I'll let them introduce themselves when they get to talk in a minute. Maybe I should also just say that we're supposed to have another speaker with us today, Troels Rasmussen. However, unfortunately, something came up and he was unable to make it. But I'm sure that we'll get a lot of great stuff out of both Tiara and Sune. So before we begin, I think I'll ask all of you to turn off your cameras while we listen to the talks, because then we get full focus on Sune and Tiara, and then we can turn on the cameras again for the discussion part. So I'll just see if I can switch the screen. Just to let you know that online here today from Orbit Lab is myself. My name is Lida, I'm the community manager in Orbit Lab, and we also have Kasper with us, who is the lab commander and always also a professor on Aarhus School of Engineering. Today's program consists of 2 talks. And afterwards we have a Q&A session. We expect to finish around 5:45, depending on how many questions you have. Both Tiara and Sune's slides will be distributed to you afterwards, so you'll get them in your inbox. Now, with regards to the questions, it's okay if you post them as we go along, but I think we should save them for the discussion part of the program. But you're welcome to post them in the chat as they occur to you. And of course, we encourage you to keep up to speed with what's going on in Orbit Lab. We do have another online session coming up in May. You can read more about that on our website or our Facebook. And we're also planning the fall semester, where hopefully we'll be able to meet up, not like this, but in person. And also, as I said before, maybe some of you just came on, I'll be recording this talk and we'll be putting it online later on. Now, all that's left for me is to hand you over to our first speaker. And as soon as, so please, if you haven't done so already, please turn off your cameras during the talk and we can turn them on later on. So over to you, Sune.
Thanks a lot. Okay, I will just quickly share my screen so I can. So please let me know when you can see.
Yeah, I want to turn your camera on as well, Sune. Just wondering.
I can do that, perhaps.
Helps me to understand if I see a face.
And not have to touch anything.
There we go.
There we go.
So
yeah.
I apologize a bit for, I don't know what's wrong with the camera. It's very dark here. Yeah, it must be hard for the light for it. Anyways, yeah, thanks for inviting me here. My name is Sune Wolf. I am CTO and partner of Unity Studios, and I'm here to present Synergy to you all. I'll try and keep this very, very casual. But as Lita said, maybe it would be easier just to leave questions till the end. That being said, who are we? Unity Studios. We have actually been around for 12 years. We originated actually as an internal department at Unity Technologies, the creators of the Unity game engine. I'm wondering, can you see the camera feeds on the right as well?
Camera feeds on the right?
Oh, you can't. Okay, that's
no,
good.
Just text.
Fine, perfect. So yeah, we originated as an internal department at Unity Technologies, but very quickly became a separate company, and we have been so ever since. We are a consultancy and development company initially focusing on games technology, helping people or companies using the Unity game engine. But in recent years, we have focused entirely on the B2B side of things. So helping big companies using real-time graphics to their benefits. We are also very experienced with XR technologies, which is the focus of today. We actually did our first VR project back in 2012. So that's before Oculus even came out with their first DK1. And as you can see here, we have helped numerous companies actually benefiting from these technologies. So this is what I like to call our bragging slide, some of the big international companies we're working with. And on top of that, we are an award-winning company. So we won 2 digital design awards from Microsoft as Microsoft partners. And recently we won a Danish digital award and a German design award for some of our XR experiences that we have done. Finally, we are also a mixed reality partner with Microsoft, actually the first company in Scandinavia getting this recognition of our expertise in using the HoloLens. Today, I will present Synergy, which is our product family of XR solutions. So previously, we have been mainly a consultancy company creating custom projects for our customers, whereas Synergy is our first line of a turnkey product solution. And it's really centered around effective collaboration. So we want to offer collaboration across XR-enabled devices. So right now we are in VR on both the Oculus Quest and Oculus Rift and HTC Vive and other Steam VR powered headsets. We are on the HoloLens, both HoloLens 1 and 2, and we are on mobile devices as well. Where we do things a little bit differently is we want to enable collaboration in a spatial context. So that meaning not only having meetings in sort of generic virtual meeting rooms, even though we offer that as well, but also enabling users to actually create a digital twin of an environment they would like to collaborate in. So that could be a 3D scan of a production line, for example. So we think that creates a lot more value to actually have the collaboration happen in the correct spatial context. And also something that is really center of this offering is that everything is user generated and very content centric. So we don't create, like we give it up to the users to actually put together their collaboration environment to dynamically access our content backend, to pull in any and all content they would like, that being images, videos, PDFs, or 3D models. So they can really set up everything they would like. So we like to see ourselves as sort of the CMS system for XR experiences. Currently, and what I will go through in this presentation is our 4 offerings: Synergy Manager, Synergy Discover, Conference, and then Operate and Assist, which I will dedicate a slide for each of those now, just to give you a better understanding of what Synergy actually is and what we offer. So Synergy Manager is basically a file management front end to our content backend. So it enables clients to access their own private, enterprise-ready, and secure content backend. So everything is hosted on Azure, and we put a great deal of work into making sure that all access is completely secure. Companies can upload their own content. They can add searchable tags to this content. They can also add like titles and descriptions to sort of add more description to each individual piece of content, which will then be able to be accessed dynamically in each of our sort of more front-end client applications, which is more the interesting part. So I'll just quickly skip over the manager. Please ask any questions in the end if you want to know more. Synergy Discover is our iOS application. So it's inspired by IKEA Place, which is sort of the go-to AR application. But instead of showing IKEA furniture, we can dynamically access all the content stored on the content backend. And again, that can be 3D models, as you can see in the video here, but it can also be images or videos that you can play. You can have PDF files that you can access and browse through. So this is really our sort of quick AR-enabled content viewer based on the backend. We also enable hot links to web pages. So from the manager, you can add a link to each of your products that can then drive users to your homepage for more information if you want that. So initially, and as it is today, Synergy Discover is sort of more a sales tool, so enabling sales personnel to have their entire product range in their on their mobile phone and bring it to customers and showing their products in a new and more exciting way. Moving on to Synergy Conference, which is our virtual reality offering. It is what you would expect from a collaboration tool in VR. So it enables a lot of users. We are really trying to push the boundaries here. Of course, you can, again, access all content. That is what Synergy is all about. So that being 3D models or any of the content you have. Of course, you can move, rotate, and scale all of your content to your liking. We also have options of drawing on all 2D content. So you can add drawing just on a regular whiteboard, but you can also draw on top of images or videos or PDFs to further collaborate and communicate what's important. We also have right now quite simple avatars, but we are working together with a company that creates much more complex avatars that we would like to offer in Synergy Conference. I'm hoping the videos come across okay. Otherwise, when Lisa is distributing the slides, I also added links to where you can see them at your own leisure. And then finally to our most complex offering, which is called Synergy Operate and Assist. So Synergy Operate is our HoloLens application, and it enables users to create their own digital copy of an environment. So using the 3D scanner built into the HoloLens, they can scan entire environments, which we see in a little bit in the video. Here is a rough 3D scan made by the HoloLens of a pump installation room. The users can add their own content, just static content, so that could be user manuals, for example, so something they would also always like to have available to them. But it's also possible to create step-by-step instructions. So really digitizing the standard operation procedures that a lot of people use and have lying around in printed forms. You can create that as sort of spatial step-by-step instructions. So if people have seen Microsoft's offering under the Dynamics 365 called Guides, this is similar to that and that offering. On top of that, we also have, of course, remote support. So a PC client using Synergy Assist can hook into a multi-user experience with the HoloLens user. And that is actually some of the videos that we see here is from Synergy Assist. So not only do we see the video stream in the top right corner, but we also see the 3D model and the HoloLens user walking around in this environment, creating a much more contextual understanding. And what you see right here is a 3D scan of our 600 square meter office here in Aarhus. So we are building and improving a bit on what the HoloLens offers out of the box, where it's usually just created for creating scans of like 5 by 5 meters. So this is where we are today with Synergy. So different offerings all tied together using this content backend. But it is definitely, I'll just go back a slide, sorry. It is definitely in the works to melt all of these offerings more together. So, so they are not so separate, but you could easily join a multi-user experience between a HoloLens, mobile phone, and remotely from a VR headset and a PC. So all of that is in the works and getting ready to be published later this year. Just so to make sure that this doesn't end up being too much of a sales pitch, which I know it can sound like, I also wanted to tell a bit about one of our clients, Grundfos, which is a very close partner. We're working a lot with Grundfos and how they use Synergy. So especially during these COVID-19 times, which I know we're all suffering from, a lot of different customer meetings and expos and stuff like that is canceled throughout the world, which has really made it difficult for Grundfos to meet their customers and show their offerings, their different products and solutions. So instead, right now, they are planning and actually already have held the first VIP customer meetings around the world in Synergy Conference. So they actually invite their end customer along with their sales team into a VR meeting in Synergy Conference and showing some of their new product offerings and discussing new potential projects. On top of that, we are also rolling out Synergy Discover to their entire sales force worldwide, enabling them to have like all of the Grundfos products just in the palm of their hands, bring them along. I just took this from Niklas Kaspersen, so he's one of the sales managers from Sweden. Last week we did numerous 3 or 4 successful meetings, customer meetings in Synergy Conference, and Niklas was one of the sales managers. So this is from LinkedIn, but it was in Swedish, so sorry, but I used the automated translation tool in LinkedIn, which is not very good, I can see now. But just to have like an actual testimonial from some of our end users of how they see the use of VR as a collaboration tool and for meeting customers. So what he highlights is it's possible, even though they cannot physically meet with their clients and customers, it enables them to show new solutions and what business value they can bring in a completely new way. So the ability to dynamically just load in new 3D models showing different types of solutions is really something that they like and see a lot of benefit in. On top of that, of course, there's a lot of time and money saved from reduced traveling. So they see it as an effective way of actually bringing people together and discussing new business ideas and proposals. And then Grundfos, of course, is very big on the UN sustainability goals. So of course, there is also an environmental saving due to reduced traveling. So that is also something they really see a big benefit in. And just to sort of put a bit of context, or just to talk a bit about the order of magnitude at Grundfos right now, this is really the use of VR is exploding. They have on a weekly basis up to like 100 VR headsets being ordered from their different departments throughout the world. So it is really picking up speed, and we would like to think that that Synergy has something to do with that. So just to sort of wrap up, and I can see that I've gone through this quite quickly, so we can also always circle back to some of the offerings and discuss them in more detail. But just to sort of say, why do I think that a product like Synergy is really important in these times? And I think the world has matured and they're ready for these technologies. But if everything needs to be custom made, it just gets too expensive to create, too time consuming to create, and too costly to service and maintain. So having a turnkey solution just ensures this cost effective and very speedy integration at these enterprise customers. And again, our focus on ensuring that the end user themselves can actually set up all the content they would need. They can quickly exchange, put in new content, like without having to contact a bureau like ourselves, just prolonging that and making it much more expensive. So enabling them to control their own content is really, really important. So again, as I said earlier, this could be seen as a sort of CMS system for XR collaboration. And then a solution like Synergy has really been built from the ground up for enterprise and scale. So security is a big thing. Talking to clients like Grundfos, we're also talking to Novo Nordisk and Haldor-Topsoe and some of the big industrial customers. Security is really, really important. Like sometimes they would like to show early prototypes of new product offerings in a digital setting like this. So it's really important that some random guy cannot just jump in the middle of a meeting. That's also why we created the entire backend. We host it right now as a SaaS solution, so as a cloud solution. But it is made ready for actually deployment in the company's own private tenant, so they can have complete control over everything. And then finally, right now we have entire user authentication flow, but it's also made ready to be connected and linked up with the company's own Active Directory, for example. So they only have to manage their users in a single place. So all of this, we would like to think that it really will enable users to collaborate much more effectively, like right now and moving forward. So that was actually what I prepared. So I can see, as I said, a bit fast. So I don't know if we should open up the floor to questions right now or wait till later.
Actually, one question just came in from Chiara. She's asking about the avatars.
Yeah.
Do you create them yourselves, and why do the avatars not have lower torsos? But you were saying that you were forming a collaboration with a company that did more advanced avatars, right?
So I think I could talk about like 25 minutes just about avatars. But right now we have created a very simple avatar system. So we have like male and female, and we have different types of hairstyles and clothing. But it is very, I don't know if you can see it from here, but it's very abstract avatars. The thing about avatars, if you want to make them more realistic, you very quickly reach the sort of the point of like where it gets creepy. So it's really a balance. So we've gone for the very abstract representation just to not creep people out. And that's basically the same. So right now, Synergy Conference is most often used on the Oculus Quest. So you basically have 3 tracking points. So you have each of your left and right controller, and you have your head. And that's what we use for torso and hands. It is possible, and you can see numerous examples of this where you use like full arms and just use inverse kinematic calculations of where the elbow should go. But it's also impossible to make that perfect. So sometimes the elbow will just go into the torso or get at a weird angle. So to avoid that, we just abstracted that away. And the same thing with like lower body and leg. You can do sort of procedural animations of legs when you move around, but especially during teleportation, it can be, you reach that uncanny valley, like we would like to call it, where it just looks weird. Like if your legs are just like half a meter offset from your body because the animations don't keep up. Or you need to stretch an avatar because you have one of our developers is 2 meters and 8, right? So there's a lot of complexity in getting this right. So for us, this is sort of an initial safe bet, at least. I think all would like to have something that looks much more like the individual participant, so you can more easily see who you're talking to and not just having to read the name tag. And of course, having a full body tracking is really, it is interesting, but right now there are too many drawbacks from to my liking, at least. And we are working with a company, they're called Wolf 3D, which they're actually providing the avatar solution to HTC's meeting application. So they're creating an open platform where users will be able to go and configure their own avatars and actually buy their own like virtual accessories. So if they want to have a funny hat or whatever, And we're collaborating with them to just directly integrate their avatar system into not only Synergy Conference, but Synergy as a whole. So you also saw a very, very simple avatar in the HoloLens and Assist solution, where we just want to use the same avatar system over.
Great, thank you for that. We have one more question, and then I think we'll move on to Tiara's talk afterwards, and we can do the rest of the questions in the end. There's a question here from Casper. He says, you talked about boundaries. What are the main limiting factors from a technical perspective?
Oh, which boundaries? Sorry.
Casper, would you like to elaborate?
Yes. So you talked about, I assume, like the number of participants and the rendering and the like. You said you're trying to push the boundaries for how many people you can gather. Like, what are you running into from a technical point of view? And can you handle it? Are you handling it locally in the clients, or can you kind of solve some of it in the cloud to not over process on each kind of unit that you're participating from?
Yeah, so again, I'll try and keep my answer short because there's a lot to talk about. Like regarding participants, what actually would be the limiting factor is voice, since like if everybody should speak to everybody, it just very quickly becomes a very bad experience for everybody, because everybody's just talking them out like on top of each other, but also just the amount of data actually being transferred. So we enable just a simple mute for each participant, so you can actually mute if you don't need to say anything. Because regarding actually like synchronizing how many avatars there are, like we could easily push 50 in a room. That's not a problem. So the main limitation right now is that a lot of the interesting XR devices, like the devices that are interesting to work with, so that being HoloLens, even like HoloLens 1 or 2, or the Oculus Quest, or other standalone VR headsets, or mobile devices, you're all relatively limited on memory, which is basically our main limitation right now. So we want to cram in a lot of content, just enabling the user to have big complex 3D models and videos and whatnot. And you will reach a limit where you just run out of memory. So right now we're just closely monitoring that client-wise, and then just basically letting the user know when they're running out of memory before the application actually crashes. There is of course a lot of, like, you can optimize stuff. So we're building a pipeline both for models to optimize those, and also like when you upload a video, you can re-encode it in a more compact format and stuff like that. So we try to help the user, but in the end, we want to also make it a flexible system where the user is in control. So if the user would like to put in one single huge model, we would still allow him to do so, but just warn them that it might be an issue memory-wise. So I don't know if that covers everything, but that's at least some of the limitations.
Thank you.
Great, and we can get back to more questions after Tiara's talk. So now, thank you very much, Sune, and I will hand you all over to Tiara. Take it away, Tiara.
Thank you. Always takes me a while to find the unmute button when I need it. All right. So I'll just share my screen as well. And let's see. You should, no, almost. Where's my Zoom window? Here we are. Here we are. Screen 1. You should now be seeing my slides, I hope.
Yep.
Great. All right.
Success.
So thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I've actually been wanting to give a talk on this for a while now. I just never had a reason to really prepare any of this content. But now that I have it, I'll definitely reuse it. So I recently took part in the first online IEEE VR conference, and it was a really fascinating experience that I'd really like to share. So attendees could fly around in the virtual conference venue. They presented their work through, cute panda avatars and whatnot, and they socialized with their peers over virtual burgers and digital cocktails. And based on this experience, I'd just like to reflect on the current state of VR and aim to highlight some of the opportunities and also challenges for these kinds of large-scale events in VR in situations that, you know, require it, like the current one, due to social distancing and everything. So I'd like to just start out by showing you the beginning of the conference, the way that we saw it, the way that we were greeted by the two conference general chairs, Kyle Johnson and Blair McIntyre. So this is a video, and I hope you should be hearing sound as well. If you don't, please let me know. Just interrupt me, but here we go.
Hello, welcome now to IEEE VR 2020's Mozilla Hubs Cloud, where many of you are watching right now. To start, we'd like to briefly tell you how we got here. We plan to be welcoming you to Atlanta. We had a wonderful main venue selected in the heart of Midtown Atlanta. We had just a really beautiful venue. You can see our hotel here. You can see what the lobby would have looked like. We had a beautiful banquet and a visit planned for you to the Georgia Aquarium, and a truly exciting program that was planned for you over the course of the last 2 years. Perhaps what we were most excited about, though, was a complimentary online experience that would increase the reach of our community. But of course, plans change. Our world's been shifted, and so we moved with it. Hello.
I did not mean to replay, apologies. So yeah, as Kyle just said, part of this conference, since it's the IEEE VR conference, was already meant to be online, but not all of it. And this needed, you know, a really quick shift. Within 2 weeks, a bunch of the volunteers and the organizers got together to build a huge virtual venue to accommodate the conference program as best as possible. And of course, since in VR space is unlimited, they just created a multitude of venues for different purposes. So there were rooms for socializing, there were rooms with tutorials, there were video rooms, there were rooms for the 3D UI contest, for demos, a bunch of rooms for demos, since each demo got its own room basically. There were rooms for the conference streams, and there were 3 tracks in total. But there were multiple rooms per track to accommodate the number of people that were expected. And then a bunch of poster rooms again. And finally, there was also the opportunity to actually create your own room, which many people then did, you know, to just hang out with their buddies or run experiments or just geek out in the virtual world. So this is what one of the large conference rooms looked like. And I think this scenery really beats sitting in a stuffy, dark lecture hall. You can see the audience there on the platform in front of that huge screen. And you might notice that there are just a couple dozen people there. And that's not because there was such low attendance, that's because each room was actually limited to 25 people, so that the whole thing could run smoothly. And that's also why there were multiple rooms per track. And here's what it looked like from the perspective of one of the participants in VR. So she's looking down at her body there and at her hands, and that's the huge screen in front of her. Just in case you haven't been to a conference before, this is what it usually looks like in real life, just to give you the contrast there. And of course, there are several implications of attending a conference in VR like this. So first of all, while mentally you're at the conference, your body is staying home, which is, you know, really cool because it fulfills the current motto. But this also means that you're available to everyone at home at the same time as being available to everyone at the conference. So your family might want things from you. Your coworkers might want things from you through email because they know you actually haven't traveled anywhere. And like Susan at some point tweeted that it was so challenging for her because she had 3 kids doing homeschooling at home during all the sessions. Beyond that, in VR, you have no access to the world beyond VR or very limited access. And with that, I mean, you can't just go and check your emails as you would otherwise. You also, well, for those of you who have tried it, wearing an HMD all day or even just for several hours is absolutely no fun. And there's no real food in VR, which is also a major issue for a conference. I'll get back to this one in a bit. So I think overall people were actually quite positive. I think that's mainly also due to the kind of audience the IEEE VR has, and they were loving it, and they were really appreciating small things. Like this person here posted that she loves it not to have to wear makeup to the conference and enjoy better coffee at home. And the cool thing about referring to the not wearing makeup, in VR, you can just reinvent yourself. You can just put a mask and present yourself to others the way you'd want them to see you, and you don't even have to get out of bed in the morning. The default avatars that were offered for IEEE VR in the beginning looked a bit like robots, and people soon personalized these by changing the textures. For example, making them look like pandas, which someone then described as a pandemic avatar. I found that very funny. And then someone shared a avatar customizer, which the audience, started using like right from the start, and the avatars started popping up in more diverse shapes. But there was one issue that people experienced right from the start, which was they were not able to recognize each other on site. So they started attaching pictures of themselves to the avatars. And of course, in VR, you could also enable these name tags that we also saw in Suna's talk earlier. And given that people actually use their real names, you could identify them that way. Of course, that causes, visual clutter, but that's another problem to deal with in future. And even so, even with name tags, I witnessed several occasions where people were looking for each other in VR. And one of the main reasons there is that we don't move naturally in VR. I mean, first of all, you can fly, so someone could actually be above you where you might not be looking for them. But then also, you could pop in and out of different conference rooms, which makes it really difficult for people to go and look for you. And I think in future, this is something that could be supported maybe by a kind of compass or mini map showing the location of your friends, like in games, or like a location sharing feature as we have on Google Maps. Now, overall, there was something really special and exciting about having talks about VR in VR. And first of all, it's awesome that in VR, we don't actually have to stick to the laws of physics. We can, for example, all have the talks, have all the talks in a single room. So for example, in this huge hall, all 3 tracks were playing simultaneously, and you could go and listen to one of the talks by just moving closer to it. Really sorry, this video is really, really bad. But so you see the user here just moving closer, and as soon as she gets close enough, suddenly the sound of that talk would actually start. And if she was further away, she would not hear it. So there's none of this natural audio clutter that you would get otherwise. And another thing that you might notice here is that people were flying. So you'd never again need to suffer because the person sitting in front of you is too tall. Other presentation locations were much, much smaller. And these were used in particular for the speakers who presented in VR. They were also allowed to customize their own locations. So for example, this guy here put a fish tank in there. And I'd like to just show you what a talk like that was like from an example of a speaker in my own session, presented as a cute panda.
So since they need to look around the environment to select for the object, there's a voice assistant telling them to either look left or right. So it always updates depending on where the user is currently facing.
And so from the look of it, he actually didn't have controllers in his hand, so he couldn't really gesture. But I found the talks in VR much more engaging than the other types of talks, which you'll see in a moment. And the funny thing is they since we don't have any mimic, you have, no impression of who's actually talking in the room. They just made the heads bob up and down or increase in size when you were talking. But so one thing to notice here is that what he's presenting is actually just a set of slides. And in one of the earlier talks, someone raised, the question, do we need VR to present our slides if that's all we're doing? But we could also ask this question the other way around. Do we need slides when we're presenting in VR? Because we could actually be showing 3D content. We could be, showing simulations of things. We could take people on a full experience, allowing them to maybe explore an environment like a museum. So there might be a lot more work that we need to do to just change inherently how these conferences might work, to really take advantage of all the possibilities that we have in VR. But so I mentioned other presentations or different presentations earlier, the majority of talks was actually given through Zoom, like this one right now, mainly because not everyone has access to VR gear. For example, I would have access to it at the university, but we were all supposed to stay home. So yeah, that was that. From a presenter's point of view, this is, of course, it's disconcerting not to see one's audience. I feel like I'm holding a monologue here. We, like there as here, we only see our own face. At times we could potentially see the video of one or two other participants. But beyond that, we were oblivious of how what we were saying was received by the people in VR or how the Twitch audience were receiving it. Speaking of Twitch, this is how most of the audience actually followed the talks. So if you're not familiar with Twitch, it's a tool that allows you to just stream content. And the cool thing is we could actually stream all three talk tracks in parallel. And this was a little bit like flipping through channels on a TV. So as soon as one talk got boring, we could just move on to the next and watch that one. So this was one of my colleagues here presenting. Obviously, I watched his entire talk, but yeah. And someone tweeted how much they enjoyed watching these talks, you know, from the comfort of their couch, or someone else was apparently sitting in a hot tub. So it was really nice to actually have this flexibility. But so for me, as a presenter and participant in the entire experience, and since my research revolves around this, the lack of our actual bodies in VR was probably the greatest limitation. And so for the record, I didn't have access to a VR headset. I did, however, go and explore the VR environment through my PC, since lots of different platforms were supported, which was really awesome. But so to get back to the issue with the lack of bodies, here's an outtake from a presentation I gave in person in 2018. And you see that I excessively use gestures. I do so right now. It's just completely useless. And then in contrast, here's the talk that I gave at the IEEE VR, and it was kind of subduing in a way that you knew nobody actually saw you. I don't know, it just made me less active in my entire presentation. And I think it generally just made talks more boring and also slightly more awkward because the only thing you constantly see is yourself. And then came the end of each talk, and that was probably the most awkward thing ever because there was simply just silence. Just to illustrate that, here's the closing ceremony of the WIST in 2018, normal conference with lots of people co-located. Look at how close they're sitting. That's completely unrealistic nowadays. But yeah, I'll just play this video. Please pay attention to the soundtrack.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
And that was just a small award, so no huge applause, but applause nevertheless. And here's an outtake of the award ceremony at this conference.
Congratulations. Are they around?
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, you win one of the Pico headsets. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
It makes me cringe. It's so awkward. So the main issue really was that, you know, pandas can't clap, or any avatar, you know, you're holding, even if you're holding the controllers in your hands, there's nothing you can do to actually make a clapping sound. You don't have actual hands. And we were in Zoom during this, like all the volunteers were in the Zoom call as well. So we were actually unmuting our microphones and we were clapping into the microphones as loudly as we could. But Zoom is smart in that it filters out sounds from other microphones if there's too many people talking at the same time. So it just wouldn't let the sound through, even though we intended it to be noisy. So yeah, as Kent tweeted afterwards, handling applause is uncanny in virtual spaces. And I think we'll need to find a better way of handling this. For example, one approach that AltSpace VR offers is the opportunity to show your appreciation with emojis. And I really love the music to this one.
Bum, 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 bum.
All right.
Bum, 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 bum.
Okay. Beyond the talks, the most important aspect of conferences is socializing and networking. And of course, we did that too at IEEE VR. There were several events where people with similar interests met up to hang out. And what fascinated me about this particular scene here is that they actually seem to be social distancing. And I mean, in VR, it can be quite difficult to judge your distance to others. That can, have to do with the interface that you're using. For example, if you're on a phone, the field of view might make people seem further away than they actually are, or the other way around. Then also, depending on the interface you're using, you might not be able to just turn your head and glance around to know whether there's someone right next to you. So keeping your distance is the safe bet, and it allows you to keep everyone in view at the same time. Apart from that, I think our interpersonal distance also depends on our needs during conversations. So basically, if the environment's noisy, we would move further together to be able to hear. If there's bad lighting, we might look at someone more intently, and that's completely accepted. But in VR, we can just set the volume, increase it, lower it, and as of yet, there aren't any facial expressions or other small visible conversational cues. So there's no need to actually do that. But notably, as soon as they then assembled for a group picture, people actually assumed a more natural configuration. And I think perhaps it's because they were more guided by the visual cue of seeing what the whole thing looked like, and they didn't want it to look like they were, social distancing in VR. Overall, though, people just enjoyed being a bit crazy in VR, used the available features, different props to play with, and so on. And of course, very many of them offered free virtual snacks to the point where the joke was no longer very funny. Yeah, so free snacks, free virtual drinks. Sadly, the thing is that wearing an HMD, it's quite difficult to drink, as I mentioned earlier. As one person tweeted, she wasn't actually able to drink her coffee using the Quest, so she actually had to move to her laptop instead. And of course, this didn't keep people from toasting to a successful first conference in VR at the volunteer party. But if we just compare it to a different volunteer party at Kai 2017, that just looked very, very different. And we were partying until I don't know, this was in the US, maybe not that long. But yeah, there was dancing going on. There was a DJ. It was really cool. And yeah, it can't be compared, I think. Anyways, what impressed me about this conference, I think, is the number of tools it takes to even get close to what, a real conference is like. So we were using Hubs by Mozilla for VR. We were also using Zoom for presenting for anyone else who wasn't doing it in VR. We were using Twitch for streaming the talks and Slido for the audience to post questions. And of course, Slack for everyday conversation. And one of the volunteers at some point posted the new lyrics to I Will Survive, where she said, at first I was afraid, I was petrified. I didn't think I could use Hubs, Slido, Zoom, Twitch, and Slack side by side. But then I spent a little time and nothing did go wrong. And now I'm strong, virtually unstoppable from now on. And I think she really put into words how we all felt in the beginning, because having to volunteer and trying to get things to run smoothly, trying to juggle so many different things at the same time was really, it just seemed like an impossible task. But it actually worked out. Nevertheless, I think an important future development will be, to include the functionality of these multiple tools in one VR platform. At least that's something that I would very strongly wish for. And that would also allow you to actually experience a full conference in VR without having to leave VR, for example, to ask questions. If we just want to consider some pros and cons, my main takeaways from the VR conference, in terms of accessibility, of course, not having to travel is good for the environment. But then again, staying at home also made it a part-time conference. You had to divide or you just ended up dividing your time between being at the conference and being at home. But the numbers are actually very, very positive for this conference. So there were nearly 2,000 registered participants, which is almost twice the normal number as far as I remember, from twice as many countries as usually arrive. And remember, this took place in the US, so there's many people who actually have issues getting a visa for it. There were also 5%, a 5% increase in women. I don't know exactly why, but I think that's really good. So I think there's really many benefits in that regard with the VR conference. Regarding communication, I've already mentioned a lot of this. The lack of a body is really challenging. Apart from not being able to clap, you also can't read lips, which is something I very often do just to understand people more clearly. You can't read people's mimic or body language either. But on the other hand, there's really no noise, there's no distractions, and you can set the volume. With the avatars, there's the issue of recognizability. So you won't be able to recognize someone from behind, well, not even from the front sometimes, or you can't recognize them by gait or by voice, as I sometimes would at a conference when standing in line or something. On the other hand, of course, you can use name tags, which might make it easier, especially for someone like me who constantly forgets names. And there might be features in future that allow us to locate different people or friends, at least maybe. Navigation was sometimes a bit tedious. Maybe this depended a bit on the platform. I saw many people navigating very jagged paths, and also there's a huge lack of awareness. So many people would just back up into someone else, or you actually saw that in the first video that I showed as well. On the other hand, you have the freedom to fly and to jump around from one room to the other without actually having to walk. The full immersion of wearing an HMD, as I mentioned before, limits your access to the outside world, but also reduces the number of distractions. And of course, spending a day in VR has, it's put so much strain on your eyes. It's so uncomfortable, but then again, it allows you to stay in bed. And this is the almost final one. Yeah. So I think maybe this is just something due to it being the first conference that was taking, or the first IEEE VR taking place in VR. There was basic functionalities were missing. For example, to switch rooms in the beginning, you had to change the URL. And from VR, you can't change a URL. So eventually they started, putting in different portals that you could use to go to another room or travel somewhere else. But that's really something where we need to put a bit more thought into how we design these worlds to actually function. And of course, if we support it, you can do magic in VR, which is really, really awesome. And people can, I'm skipping one. Yeah, food and drinks, no actual open bar. That's a very, very serious downside. For anyone who's ever been at a conference, you probably know what I mean. That the coffee is better at home is, I guess, the good part of that. And my last point, this conference had a really beautiful venue. It was very, very different. There were very awesome avatars. People could be very creative. And for that reason, it was very, very fun. But sadly, not everyone was able to create. So the entire authoring tools at the moment are just limited to a couple people, and mostly people who actually already have experience with this. So something that we're also currently researching a little bit, and Suna is working on as well in his own domain. So I think we'll see some development in this regard. All right, and I am pretty much out of time, so I'll just skip to the end. I was just going to show you a couple of fantastic locations that people built.
I think we're okay for time, Tiara.
We're okay for time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Then I will show you some fantastic locations. So basically, just the places that I enjoyed being in. There was a beautiful, I don't know what you would call it, pagoda, I think, that people could go and explore. Some lighthouse, similar like type of building. And somebody just made this beautiful meadow that people could go and relax in. You could also hang out in space with your friends. And then this one I really liked. This was created by some of the conference participants, where you could just hang out at a fireside and there was snow, and there was a snowman. It was super, super cozy. All right, but now for real, I'm pretty much done. I'd just like to end by making a reference to Ready Player One. I hope some of you are familiar with it. Otherwise, I really recommend it. And in the story, there's the Oasis, a virtual world in which you can basically live. You can spend most of your life there. And for better or for worse, we are obviously still far away from such a vision. I think we should continue dreaming up such possible futures as in Ready Player One, to continue getting inspiration for developing and researching new ways to interact, so that we can actually effectively support social interaction between people in VR when needed. However, I think we should not lose sight of reality and just be conscious of also the aspects that we might be losing out on by experiencing these things only virtually. And for any of you who like reading, I actually recommend the book over the movie. It's way better, I think. All right, that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Tiara. It feels a bit weird because we normally like to give a big round of applause. As you said, it can be a bit awkward, but maybe we can just all turn on our cameras and do jazz hands or something.
Great idea.
Yeah, but
thanks.
Both thank you to both Sune and Tiara. I think I hope you're both willing to stick around and hopefully answer some questions from the crowd. While you in the audience, while you get warmed up and think of some good questions, actually a couple of questions came in with the registration forms. So I'll just start off with those. So there's one here from Christian Burkhardt. He says, do you think we'll eventually become as reliant on VR and therefore as lazy and unfit as the humans depicted in the movie WALL-E? And I think we'd like both of your perspectives.
Shall I go first?
Sure. Go ahead.
I think, as with everything, there's like, that could be yes and no. Just to say, like, I think we will quite soon experience actual jobs being carried out in VR. So right now, actually, we are supporting our customers carrying out part of their job, so doing meetings in VR. But also like just actually like logging on in the morning and just carry out your world, like your job in the virtual world. I think that will happen within a foreseeable time future. And if that will lead to laziness or not, I think that's with everything, right? We see also like an increased focus on fitness and living healthy, while we also see an increase in obesity, like in just in our normal world now. VR is actually being pushed as one of the new fitness platforms. So there are a lot of different like fitness apps that you can try out. So like everybody knows Beat Saber, that can definitely work up a sweat. But there are others as well that are really like focused on being a fitness app. So I think yes and no. I think it comes down to the individual. I think just like we've all been working from home for months, and I could see some of our employees said that like they had to like really make sure that they got out of their sweatpants, right, and actually get outside and do something, because you just get into you roll out of bed, go to your computer, you go to work, and then basically that's it, right? So of course there is a fear to that, but I don't think that would be the fault of VR. I think VR will also offer a lot of like relaxation and exercise possibilities. So yeah, that would be my take on that, I think.
And Tiara?
I agree with pretty much everything that Suna said. Just that I would actually tend to rather saying, no, I don't think it will make us more lazy, more unfit. I mean, I loved WALL-E. I loved the portrayal of, what becomes of humanity but the thing is, we could already be way lazier and way more unfit than we are. I mean, we have elevators, we have cars. There's no need for us to walk anywhere, mostly, or to take the stairs. And nevertheless, we do it. And people go for a run, just to stay fit. So I think it depends more on culture. And if VR, supports a culture where we don't no longer care about our fitness, then maybe. But I don't think that that will be the case. At least I'm really hoping that won't be the case. And I think the way we are currently, focused on health and improving health and living healthy, I cannot see that happening. So I wouldn't be worried about that.
Cool. And another question came in as well.
I liked that one.
From Thomas Bjornstein, who said, have you investigated the levels of cognitive workload, in brackets, emotionally, stress related, etc., when we are engaged in VR communication situations compared with real life face-to-face communication? And I think we would also like this one, both of your perspectives. Yes, go ahead, Tiara.
All right. So I haven't investigated this in person myself, at least not scientifically. I can just say from my own experience and from the reports that I've read so far that there seems to be a serious impact on both our workload and our stress levels. And I mean, I'm sure many of you have experienced this as well. First of all, we are constantly available. If I'm at work and I'm not in my office, someone who's looking for me will just have to come back later. And that's what they usually do. But now they don't know whether I'm available or not. They don't know whether I'm sitting in a meeting or not. They will just try to call me or write to me. And I have this feeling that I need to be available. So it's really, in a way, my own fault. Yeah. So I think that's really increasing the stress for me. And at the same time as being available online, I kind of also have to deal with a real world environment. So I'm at home with my boyfriend. He might be making a comment or asking me whether I want coffee. So I need to pay some attention to that as well. And then in terms of the cognitive load, for example, all of our time currently is spent at the screen. For me, it starts in the morning when I have my first meeting, to the lectures I give, even coffee breaks, and then the remote socializing in the evening. It's all in front of the screen. And otherwise, these are activities that give me a break from the screen. And the communication through video chat is not as easy as interpersonal communication, in my opinion. We just lack the subtle cues. You have the awkwardness of seeing yourself. You can't turn your head to address someone. You have to either call out names or there's constantly misunderstandings. You can't even, if you have a conversation in a group, you can't have these parallel conversations that we usually have when you talk to the person sitting next to you in the meantime, while some other thing is going on. So I think there's a lot that just makes it more complicated. And I don't know whether there's conclusive data on this, but I've just read reports by experts in psychology and medical doctors confirming that it affects our mental health, eye strain, and so on and so forth.
Sune, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think regarding cognitive load, I think we can all agree we've had our fair share of video meetings, right? We're sitting in one right now, and that is definitely much more straining than a face-to-face meeting. But I think definitely that VR is less straining. You get much more personal, like you get a bit of body language, since you can gesticulate with your hands. We actually saw some funny things in some of the larger tests we ran. Like people, like regarding social distancing, like people actually gave, like their avatars were hugging because they were just like missing actually being close to people. But also like when someone sort of took the word, people just naturally gathered in sort of a half circle around him, just acting very naturally. Whereas like in this screen, you need to sit right here and you need to have perfect lighting and look into the camera and stuff like that. It's just much more straining. And also like technologies like spatial audio. So just having that like an avatar to your right, the audio will actually come to your right. It just makes it easier, especially as Tiara said, with the like having sort of multiple communications, and actually having like in a big virtual room, you can have a part of the group having one conversation in one end and another part in the other end, much more natural, which wouldn't be possible in a big meeting like this, like just on the screen. So I think regarding like cognitive load and meeting, it's like, let's be honest, we're not there where we can just have like instead of meeting face to face, right? But it's definitely much better than meeting over a flat screen.
Great, thank you, Sune. We have a question. It's a bit of a long one. It's been sent to me in private. Kujibo, I don't know if you want to take it yourself. You're welcome to take the microphone.
Yeah. Hello. It's a bit of a long question, and I'm making frikadella at the same time. But let me find it here. It's basically, it feels to me like virtual reality, augmented reality, XR, it's moving really slowly. And why is that? If you look at the graphics that are available from the stuff that we've seen today, it's nothing like video games. It's nothing like Red Dead Redemption or GTA or anything that Xbox or PlayStation can produce. If you look at mobile phones and iPhone and Samsung, they're incredibly powerful, but there are very few augmented reality apps. I mean, the only one that really springs to mind is Pokemon Go. Why is nobody harnessing the potential here? Is that because it's expensive? Is that because the technology is still out of reach? Why does it seem like it's still sort of a thing for first movers and not sort of disseminating into the broad public?
Okay, yeah, I definitely have, I'm very opinionated on that. So sorry if this becomes an even lengthier answer, just interrupt me when it gets too much. But I think you're right, like it has been for a while something reserved for first movers. And it's because it's relatively expensive to get custom-made XR solutions. Like there's a lot of development time. It's not just like, I hope I don't insult anybody, but it's not just the next web page, right? Where you just like 3 clicks away and you have a new design. Like it is quite complex. So it's costly, and maintaining this, especially in an era where the technology is moving so fast. So there are new headsets, there are updates that just keeps like breaking stuff that needs to be fixed. So that is basically what we saw and why we are working so hard on synergy. So having this turnkey solution that just works out of the box at a much more affordable price and without having to manage the maintenance themselves, I think that's definitely something that will move like companies in that direction. So something making it more affordable and quicker to deploy and not having to create like your own solution from nothing is really something that will help. There is also like regarding the quality, it's also a bit like, yeah, we talked about costs, and you can create some truly extraordinary visuals in VR as well. It just costs a lot. So there's an Oculus Quest game which is called Red Matter. I would advise you to Google that, and they did a YouTube video of where they did some improvement recently. But they did like a complete custom render pipeline for the Quest to just get like reflection and refraction and all that stuff just really pop. It looks amazing, but like if you want all XR experiences to look like that, it would just drive cost even further. So it's not that the technology cannot do it. It's a matter of it's relatively expensive. And I would actually even say that that level of visual quality is not needed to create great value right now. Like a lot of companies would much rather have a more straightforward pipeline from their CAD engineering models into a VR ready model so they could just put it in and quickly do a design review. So I'll shut up now because I could go on for hours. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different aspects to that question.
Tiara, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Probably the first point for many is it's just too expensive for, if you're not already an enthusiast, you probably don't want to spend the money. But beyond that, I think if you're comparing it to, you know, games on other devices, it's not a fully fair comparison. If you look at smartphone games, the smartphone's a multi-purpose tool. You can play a game just really briefly on the subway just to waste some time. On the other hand, less people, I think, sit down and play a console game, right? Because it just takes more commitment. Again, it's an expensive device. So I think we're more in that area where we're thinking console games. But then from my point of view, VR it takes more effort. You have to put on the headset. You have to make sure your environment's safe. There's nothing to run into. There's no distractions. And you're not expecting anyone to ring the doorbell or something like that. and it's also non-social. So you'll always be, or most experiences nowadays are single user. I'm hoping to see a change in that, but we're just social animals, and very often we play a single player game, multiple people in front of one TV on one console, and we just take turns because we can spend time together. I think those are a couple of points that yeah, kind of cause this slow adoption. On the other hand, I do think that many VR experiences are still a bit rough. The technology is not quite ready, I think, for the mass consumers. And maybe in particular, because being immersed, there's so much more that you need to cater to. If it's content on a screen, you just need good rendering and you're in control of the perspective that the user is seeing a scene from, and so on and so forth. If you're playing a computer game, a 3D game, you already have the complexity that people might be jumping around somewhere where they're not supposed to, might be seeing the backside of, a mesh, i.e. nothing. And in VR, this goes beyond, because there's small things that bother us, like just not being at the correct height. Bothers me a lot. If I seem taller in VR, that just annoys me. And these are really small things that we need to, take control of and adjust correctly. And so I think we're not quite there yet with many things.
Just a quick comment on that, because I completely agree on your like the lack of multi-user and socialing in a lot of these experiences, and that's really why we put multiplayer first and foremost. Like, it's so important. It's what we do as humans. We meet and we collaborate on stuff. And for years, like, these technologies has been, I put on my headset and this is my experience. Not being able to share it, not being able to collaborate with people is just an unnecessary hindrance, since the technology for multi-user is ready. Like, we take it a step further, and like in doing multi-user across like on-site HoloLens and iPads and remote like desktop VR headsets and whatnot. Making it much more fun and challenging, but also like just raising the value. So yeah.
Great, and we have a question from Jonas. Jonas, do you want to take the microphone?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
All right, so I work in entertainment, and we actually do a collaboration with Aarhus University looking into horror psychology. And so we do mostly immersive theater events, and I've been seeing a large potential in virtual reality in entertainment and gaming. I have PlayStation VR myself, which I enjoy, and I've tried different other games and setups, and I was just wondering what could be like the next level. I know that in Utah they do the Void, which is like an immersive room where you actually go around with haptic feedback gloves, and you can actually feel the walls and things in your face while you're wearing a VR screen. I think this is amazing. But of course there's impracticalities and the expenses, and we were looking into using it ourselves in our immersive theater, but it just came down to it wasn't reliable enough 2 years ago when we looked at it.
So sorry, what was the question? Just to
sorry, the question is where do you see the potential in using virtual reality in entertainment? And for my focus, it would be immersive entertainment.
Yeah, I think there's a huge potential, like just being able to bring users to like any virtual world or like setting you like. I think what we're already seeing, but what will just increase at an alarming rate, is a lot of different VR peripherals that will pop out. Like, we have the Danish Rococo suit, and we also have like haptic feedback suits and gloves, and we have eye tracking built into the headsets. We have like a lot of that stuff will just pop out and make that more capable, but also like less approachable, right? So now you don't even, now you have to put on your headset and your full body suit and whatnot. It's like, I don't know, I think it could end up being as much of a hindrance as it is an opportunity. But I think, again, these are early days. So of course, like Ready Player One or similar to what we see there will happen. I think I would bet my life on it. we're just a few years away, right? But there are definitely some great opportunities already now. I think the technology is definitely mature, but it depends on, of course, your needs and what sort of fidelity of feedback and immersion you're looking for in your particular case.
Thank you very much.
Great. And we have another question from Alexander. Do you want to take the microphone, Alexander? Oh,
hi. Very quiet.
We can't hear you, Alexander.
I can hear him very quietly. He's whispering.
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
it's a bit
better now.
Okay, sorry. It was my microphone. So yeah, mine is a bit longer. I actually have an academic background in cognitive science, and I am particularly interested in user research and UX. So I'm interested in, when it comes to VR tools like the ones that Sune talked about, what is the starting point when it comes to increasing the intuitiveness of them? Do we start with observing the behavior and trying to, to allow people to recreate their behavior in VR, or is it rather, exposing test users to the tools and then just observing what is it that they will try to do when in there? Because I'm thinking we do not expect the VR experience to be the same thing as having our normal embodied perspective that we have in everyday life. So I'm just like, what is the more common approach, if one of these is even an approach?
I can go first, at least talk about our approach. It could actually be either or, but usually we try to sort of replicate what users are used to, because these are already new technologies, so there's a lot of stuff to get used to. So trying to come up with like weird and intuitive ways of interacting with stuff usually isn't a good idea, at least not with our audience. But just as a funny idea, just a funny anecdote, in Synergy Conference, we have the ability to draw on everything, right? And you can grab a pen. And the funny thing is, people understand that you need to pull a trigger to grab a pen, and you get a pen in your hand. But every user, the first time they need to draw, they put the pen to paper and they press again. And we actually made it so when the pen touches the paper, it starts drawing, because that's what happens in real life, right? But people just sort of have that idea that, oh, I probably need to activate this pen because it's a virtual pen. And it just, so everybody actually drops the pen again, and then they need to, oh, now it disappeared. No, you just dropped it. So you need to pick it up and just put pen to the paper. So usually what we would do, we try to make interactions simple and not complex. We really try to make the technology as transparent and invisible as possible to the user. So we try to make it simple, but in the end, a lot of users get a lot of cognitive overload when they get into a new experience with new hardware and they need to get everything to work. So making it simple is a good idea, and you can just never anticipate how users will interact with your system. So you need to test it. So you need to do your best, do some user testing, see what happens, and then iterate on it. We're sticking to the idea, though, that a pen should draw when you touch paper. So we're trying to stick to that, even though all new users will drop that pen. So we'll see if we need to change that in the future.
Thank you very much.
And Tiara, do you have anything to add?
Well, basically, from the research point of view, we actually approach it from the other side. We throw users in there and try out different things and see how they react, whether or not they know how to use something or not, or what they would actually like to do with an object. And it was in one of our prototypes, we let them prototype different devices, different touchscreen devices in VR, so they could, just create new iPhones, iPads, whatever, by pulling them out of a box. And they could resize them, and they could draw on them or put different virtual content on them from websites. And one thing that everybody did and enjoyed tremendously was to throw those iPads through the room. And that was something that now it's completely clear to me. But at that moment, we were not expecting that to happen. And it caused some issues for us because the iPads they threw away were not retrievable. They flew beyond where the users could actually travel. So we then had to make them vanish at some point. But so yeah, we're more interested actually in just figuring out how they do things and what they do. And so far, we find that people tend to react to their environment. So if you design an environment that looks very realistic, they will behave realistically. If you show them things in the environment that make them believe it's otherwise, then they will adapt to that. So if you give an avatar a body that has legs, that has not just a torso, but also legs, they will assume that they can walk around. They will also assume that they can't collide with a table, let's say. If you give an avatar, if you give a user a small avatar, like a box-shaped thing, they will not assume that. They will just think they can fly through space somehow because they don't have legs. So I think there's a lot that you can manipulate there.
Great. Casper, you had a question earlier on.
Sune wanted to add something, I think.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Sune.
sorry. It was just a small thing, because you also see a lot of like sort of big brands start actually like just creating like, this is just how you do stuff. Everybody would expect that you can pinch zoom on a phone today, right? So, and like Oculus is trying to do it with the grab on the controllers, but we actually try to steer away from that, because our audience is not the average just like gamer that tries out a lot of different stuff. So we try to make just tools that are really simple to use. So that's also something to, I think we will see sort of a de facto standard of how you actually would expect to teleport and grab stuff and interact with stuff. That is sort of being created through just numerous applications across a lot of different companies. But there's also a danger in that if you just expect users to understand and know of this standard. So yeah, just came to think of that.
Thank you very much.
If I may add a question to you, Sune, about that. So you're letting people pick up a pen by pulling the trigger once, right? Pulling it again releases the pen.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, why would you think this is intuitive, since when I pick up a pen, I have to keep holding it? So why wouldn't they keep pulling the trigger? I know that can be tiring, but just from
we actually do both, because we see people doing it differently. So you can both pick up a pen by just quick clicking, and then you have it until you click again, or you can actually click and hold, and then you have it until you let go. So we just have a little threshold. If you pull the trigger for more than half a second, we expect you to press and hold to keep hold of an item. So we try to sort of cater to different types of users while still making a relative simple interaction scheme. Because you are right, like a lot of people would expect that you just like you click and you hold because I keep holding this object, right? And some people will just do the opposite, because we're used to with a mouse, you click once and you click again. So yeah.
Great. Casper, do you want to take the stage?
I think it was a comment both in Sune's, or not a comment, or a question, both from Sune's and Tiara's talk. In terms of communicating through VR and using VR as a social space to meet up, I think the most interesting thing is the like new game rules compared to a Zoom meeting. And I think what Sune, what you're doing on your platform is the interacting around a physical object and being able to point and turn and rotate and demonstrate. That is not feasible in the same way. Even then, if you go into the physical world and you bring more of an augmented reality with the digital twin, that opens up completely new ways of communicating that we've never done before. So we have to mix our kind of online